Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Hare Rama. Jai Srila Prabhupada, Jai Sri Vaishnavas, Vaishnavis everywhere. Welcome back to our Bhagavad Gita as it is, reading and live stream. Episode number 63. We're almost done with chapter 8, doing verses 20 through 22. After this, there's just one or two more verse clusters, and then we're on to chapter 9. Please join me or not as we welcome our worshipable Lord and his literary incarnation. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Jnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Salakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. We will begin by reading all three verses as they are literally translated by H.D. Goswami. Here we go. Still higher than this unmanifest is another eternal unmanifest, which does not perish when all beings are vanishing. They call that imperishable unmanifest the highest path, reaching which they do not return, for that is my supreme abode. By exclusive devotion, one can surely attain that supreme person in whom all beings exist and by whom this whole world is suffused. Suffused. So that's the end of 22. Suffused. That's a very particular word there, which is probably perfect, but I'm not so familiar with it. Let's do a quick Google search. To spread through or over as with liquid or light, to fill thoroughly or permeate as with a quality or emotion. Synonym, imbue. Yep, that's the perfect word for this verse. Prabhupada typically uses the term all-pervading. Which is probably a Sanskrit cognate word, or at least the per in pervading is probably from Sanskrit, that prefix per. Beautiful. This is such a breath of fresh air. I'm studying for my elementary Bible exam this Thursday, and my teacher's going to take off points if I use phrases that aren't exactly based on the Bible. But the thing is, the Christian Bible is not scientific, not the way this is. So, and I did the mock test last week, and one of the figurative terms in the Bible is river. So there's water, spring, fountain, river, the sea. These all have very specific metaphorical, figurative meanings. And the river, I kind of forgot it, but I remembered the water is the word of God. And the spring is like something like where the word comes from, or like, the pasture that shares the word is something like that. And the sea, that's like the whole world of people from which, we can drop a net into fish for people. Jesus told his disciples to go out and be a fisherman of men. So that's what he was referring to. He's saying going into the sea of men and catch some fish. But what is the river? And I couldn't quite remember it as we studied it from the Bible exactly, but so I'm just thinking about it as if it's a scientific analogy that I'm used to in the East. And what is the river? It's the thing that flows, where water flows, especially from a high place to a low place. And so immediately in my mind, I thought, oh, this is the disciplic chain of succession, from master to disciple. And that's what I wrote on the mock test, this disciplic chain of succession. And which I knew was like maybe not technically right. And I may lose points on that. I'm going to meet my advisor today in 2 hours, and she'll probably have my my mock test scored to give back to me, and we'll see. It's probably that one is probably marked wrong. But then I talked with her after, and we looked at it. It's the river means the hearts of the evangelists and the disciples. So not only is it basically the same thing, it's actually worse. Even though those words like, that's so full of crap, man. No offense to her. I mean, these Christians are devotees of the Lord, just as the ISKCON devotees are, and Muslims, whatever else. But there's just like a basic thing with how language works and logic works that, the standards just aren't being met in so many places. I'm really disturbed by it. So, I mean, it's not enough. First of all, evangelist, that I'm pretty sure that word doesn't exist in the Bible. So if she's going to mark down points because I use a word like master and disciple instead of evangelist and believer, which are synonyms in English, which mean basically the same thing. It's like, come on, dude. And evangelist is not even in the Bible anyway. Dude, come on. This is not cool. Furthermore, the important part is that it's a river that's flowing from high ground to low ground, from master to disciple, from evangelist to believer. But that's not actually in the answer I'm supposed to write. It's just the hearts of all of them. It's like it's a sea, like it's just a pool or a lake where they're all just mixed together. No, it has to go from the top down to the bottom. That's what river means. But that's not actually in. That part is left out. And so it stays confusing to those of us who are logical and scientific. And that's also exactly why I'm taking this Bible course, because I want to know how a non-scientific faith of God can work as well as it has. Christianity is the number one religion in the world today. And I'm curious about it, Prabhupada mentioned explicitly that Lord Christ is a Shakti Avesh avatar, as is he and his Guru Maharaj, basically. I don't know exactly how that term works and means or whatever, but these are just or like Buddha too. These are just highly empowered, highly pure personalities, very close to Vishnu, very close to Krishna. And then everything else is everything else. The church is something else. The disciples and the grand disciples and so on, this is all gets more and more changed by, time, and it's all more and more infected by material, the material world. I'm just texting my advisor now. Said, yeah, we're going to meet at a cafe later, and they have some good breads. I'm like, oh, dude, I already had too much bread today already. One pastry is enough for me for the whole day, bro. I don't actually need another one. But another quick personal thing. Life is good. Got gold rings for the first time. Near my ideal body weight. My health is getting better thanks to Dr. Lee. Using my Chim stickers, Acu stickers. Those are magnets in there. And it's on a meridian line. There's a needle as well, but the needle is really short. It's not really a full acupuncture needle. It's, it's too short. It's more to, I don't know, it's only skin deep. it's more than, and I guess it's just so the magnet can get deeper into the meridian line, I guess. Oh, and there was one more thing about H.D. Goswami's translation I wanted to read. And this is one thing that is special that you don't really get as much in the in Prabhupada's translation. They both say essentially the same thing. And at the essential level, there's no difference. Just like at the essential level between Prabhupada's original book and his edited book, there's like zero essential difference. There are many particular differences. But I honestly haven't found a single essential difference, a single first principles difference. Maybe the only one I can think of is like Guru Tattva, that they kind of edited it to set it up so that these ISKCON gurus could be worshipped more and this and that. But even if you get a few verses like that, it's still overwhelmingly overtaken by so many other verses that either were not changed, or even if they were changed, they're just not changed enough to take away from the essential truth of all of this, that actually the Lord is supreme and Prabhupada is a pure devotee, and like that. This is what I mean by first principles and essential truths. Like if you're not actually on that basic level, you don't understand what I'm talking about, and you're not actually qualified either. Okay. So H.D. Goswami says translates it as, there's this unmanifest world, which we talked about last week in the last cluster. And then now we're talking about the eternal unmanifest. So that juxtaposition between unmanifest and eternal manifest, that's really interesting. Prabhupada translates this as, there is an eternal and transcendental, there is another nature which is eternal and transcendental. And then he compares that with the manifested and unmanifested matter. So you kind of have to guess that this eternal and transcendental nature is also unmanifested, which is not a hard thing to guess. For this verse in particular, I like Prabhupada's translation more because it's just way more beautiful and inspiring. But that's typically how it goes. There's a different place for different translations. I go to H.D. Goswami's translations because they're more literally, linguistically, technically scientific. They're more linguistically literal, basically. So it doesn't sound as good because Sanskrit is not English. It's not structured the same way. So sometimes it's kind of like, what? But then when you see how the words relate to each other, you sometimes get a glimpse of what Krishna is doing with this wordplay that you don't always get with Prabhupada's translation. But at the same time, because Prabhupada's translation is so superior, you don't ever need to know what Krishna's really doing at that wordplay kind of inside joke, so to say, level. Having both is great for me. All right, here's verse 20. Yet there is another nature, which is eternal and is transcendental to this manifested and unmanifested matter. It is supreme and is never annihilated. When all in this world is annihilated, that part remains as it is. Hashtag as it is. That's another, lovely thing about Prabhupada's, and this is why I was smiling earlier, talking about all pervading. When Prabhupada as a writer, when he finds like a technical Sanskrit term to bring into English, he's going to want to just keep using that same word over and over again, even if it's slightly different in another case. Like Krishna consciousness is a great example of that. In Sanskrit, it's wildly different in different contexts. Sometimes it's buddhi yoga, other times it's vidya. I mean, there's other Sanskrit words too, I think, where Prabhupada will translate those words as Krishna consciousness, but then he'll also use Krishna consciousness in kind of a general word for like ISKCON, being in ISKCON and different things. That's how devotees use it today. But anyway, it's very effective strategy for building a strong neural network of connections. So you stay connected because everything is all connected and it's all self-sustaining, as opposed to using some other word only for one particular case. Like, for instance, that word suffuse that H.D. Goswami used, that's a literal translation, which is probably perfect as far as what it actually means in that particular verse. But that word is probably not used anywhere else in the entire Gita, even in H.D. Goswami's translation. That's probably the only time that word is going to be used, because it's so precise and so literally translated just for that verse. But Prabhupada's Gita is like holographic. It's one thing from here corresponds to everything else. It's like circles within circles. Everything connects to everything else constantly, which is how every Bible should be. That's how Scripture should be organized. And Prabhupada did explicitly mention you don't actually need all of the Gita and all the Bhagavatam. You just need like 10 verses. And actually, even those 10 verses, you don't even need all 10. You can take just 3 of them or something, because it's a very simple philosophy. It's simple for the simple, but if you want to make it complicated, I mean, this is the best faith to follow, where if you want to have a complicated, sophisticated discourse on God, I mean, this is the best place to be. But I don't know any acharya that really stresses the importance of doing that. In fact, it's just the opposite, which is a Eastern trend. That's every Eastern wisdom tradition I know is like that. Judo, one of them, Confucianism. I mean, they're all first principles, stay based, # stay based. That's what East means. Orthopraxy, not orthodoxy. Really short purport here. On my notes I wrote, it's hard to imagine that when this whole world and universe is annihilated, at the end of a great long day of Brahma, there is another world which is completely unchanged and eternal. And we did talk about that in the last verse cluster. So this is a good transition verse. It says, yeah, that's still true that, there's, even though, you don't want to die and you're so attached to all the things happening or whatever. And it seems like things are so long and important, but from the perspective of the eternal transcendental, this world is nothing. It's just a little bubble that pops and there's dust and it's gone in a second. That's all. Verse 21. That supreme abode is called unmanifested and infallible, and it is the supreme destination. When one goes there, he never comes back. That is my supreme abode. I love, once again, I just love having 2 translations at the same time to bounce back and forth with. Just makes everything better. And as I thought, so H.D. Goswami uses the word imperishable But Prabhupada uses this word infallible. That's, I think, a bit stronger, and it's a good word there. That's in the literal and colloquial translation for Prabhupada. It's the second word in the verse, aksharaha, infallible. Also, for me, interesting to note, um, reaching which they do not return, for that is my supreme abode. Semicolon, for that is my supreme abode. For that is my supreme abode. It's how H.D. Goswami um, translate it, because that's how Krishna talks, because that's how Sanskrit works. It's they're very long, dense sentences, but to really translate it into English, so the same authority that Krishna has and that Krishna is utilizing with his discourse with Arjuna, Prabhupada does it perfectly, where this verse is actually three separate sentences. And that period, those three periods, give the adequate break in rhythm so that your heart, your soul can actually feel the weight of what he's saying. He never comes back, period. That is my supreme abode, period. This is a very simple, effective way of being authoritative. It's also significant. I'm reading from my notes now that I wrote it's a beautifully structured verse. Once again, the three periods are effective, but it's the last line. From these first two verses of the cluster, it's not until really this last line of the second verse where Krishna says, "It's mine." And that's good teaching. Once again, the point of this is not look at me, I'm Krishna, I'm the best, which is true. I'm not saying it's not true, but it's about he's singing his song as the Cupid of all cupids. He's singing his song to bring back his people. He's going to start with Arjuna. He's going to start by getting Arjuna back on the path. And then he's going to get the rest of us as well with his beautiful song. It's about you. It's more about you than it's about him. When you go there, you won't come back to this material world. That's what you need to hear. And then Krishna says, it's my home. It's because it's from me and I'm the best and I'm all bliss. You won't leave again. You're home. So the purport begins with Srila Prabhupada talking about how, and this is not really in the verse itself, but a lot of that first part of the purport, it's only one paragraph, but it's a very long paragraph. And the first half of it, at least, is all these particular details, how this supreme abode is a place where all desires are fulfilled, full of palaces, desire trees, Sarabi cows, limitless supply of milk, hundreds of thousands of goddesses of fortune. The Lord blows his flute. He's the most attractive in all worlds. And then in the second half, Prabhupada says, in the Gita, Lord Krishna gives only a small hint of his personal abode. That's the point of this and the last verse cluster is really to give a hint, is not to give the whole thing away, but just to let the reader know their place in all of this. Not in a bad way, but in a hopeful, inspiring kind of way. And if you do want to know more in detail, you can by doing more devotion, but also by, and Prabhupada is right to mention this, but also by reading more advanced, more detailed, more advanced Vedic literatures. And to get a vivid description, this is given in the Brahma Samhita. And then in the very end, Prabhupada mentions how on this world, on this earth, Vrindavan, 90 miles southeast of Delhi, is a replica of that supreme Goloka Vrindavan located in the spiritual sky. My notes, I also wrote that it seems Krishna and Prabhupada are working together to show the reader something which is unimaginably amazing. Yep, it's only a hint. Yep, that's it. On to 22. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is greater than all, is attainable by unalloyed devotion. Although he is present in his abode, he is all-pervading, and everything is situated within him. First, let's look at all-pervading. Is that directly from the Sanskrit here? Bhutani? I don't see any word like that. So in Prabhupada's literal translation, it says, the Supreme Personality, he, the Supreme, than whom no one is greater, O son of Partha, by devotional service can be achieved, but unalloyed, undeviating devotion is within all this material manifestation by whom all, whatever we can see, is distributed. He is distributed. All. Okay, so the actual words is sarvam tatam, all distributed. Tatam, distributed. So in this context, you can see how Prabhupada translates that as all-pervading, and you can see how H.D. Goswami translates it as suffused. And you could probably translate it a bunch of other ways too. I wonder if I'll do my own Bhagavad Gita translation as a totally non-Sanskrit scholar. That'd be neat, right? No time for that. It's just not in my place at all. That would for someone like me, that would be offensive. I do not have a PhD in Sanskrit. That would be a waste of my time and offensive. But what we're doing now is great. Not, this is the best I can do is what we're doing right now. So H.D. Goswami uses the word exclusive devotion. And Prabhupada literally translates ananyaya as unalloyed, undeviating devotion. Exclusive should also be there. I mean, to really fully understand this, remember back to what we were talking about some time ago. There are other demigods. don't worship them. So that's what exclusive means. It means only Krishna. That must be there. Unalloyed, I think that could be what unalloyed means. Like an alloy of metal. So something that's not alloyed with something else is pure. But unalloyed delight means complete and unreserved. That could be an example of one of these kind of more like British English things we're getting from Prabhupada because of where he's from, which is not good or bad. It's my favorite English. Acharya English of Srila Prabhupada and his Srila Prabhupada as well as my favorite English. It's my favorite thing to read in the English language by far. But yeah, every once in a while you get one of these words like unalloyed. We rarely hear that word, but at the same time we know alloy. Most of us know an alloy of metal, and so you can get a literal translation of that word quickly by the morphology. But then it maybe gets confused by colloquial usage, which has changed in recent years and whatever, but that's okay. I guess I would just combine the two and say we should do devotional service, which is unalloyed, undeviating, and exclusive to Sri Krishna. And by that, we can attain the Supreme Personality of Godhead, even though he's present in his supreme abode, because he's also everywhere. He's also everywhere else, and everything else is within him. So this verse, which is the conclusion of the cluster, is a gentle and hopeful reminder that Krishna is not some tyrant in a faraway ivory tower. He's always all-pervading and everywhere, and everything is within him. It is just that his supreme abode is supreme. That is, it is a more intimate place to associate with him. But his plenary expansions, the super soul and whatever else, is everywhere. Krishna is everywhere. You don't have to go somewhere else to get him because he's everywhere. And you are in him. You don't have to go anywhere either. He doesn't have to go anywhere. You don't have to go anywhere. The second paragraph in the purport talks about the most important part of this verse, which may be overlooked. When I first read this verse, going through the notes, I overlooked this part, but it definitely seems to be the most important part of the verse, which is, I believe, why Prabhupada put this in the second of two paragraphs in the purport. And this is also the last one in the cluster as well. So we like to finish strong, right? And the key is, once again, how do we get there? It's all about practice. Bhagavad Gita is all about the practice you need to actually attain Godhead. It's not about all the particular advanced things about this rasa or this incarnation or that incarnation or this lila or that lila. It's not about any of that. It's about universal, eternal principles for transcendence and ascendance for conditioned souls within this material world. Not just humans in Kali Yuga. Humans in other yugas as well can read the Gita and say, yes, this is true for me too. Yes, I am practicing this already, whether you call it this or not. It's simply eternal. And that's why in the very beginning, chapter 1, I believe, maybe chapter 2, but I'm pretty sure it's chapter 1, Krishna says, I first spoke this to the sun god millions of years ago. So this Bhagavad Gita we're reading is 5,000 years old. And then millions of years before that, this same song was sung to the sun god. And of course, because it's a material world, in time, the purity loses and whatever, and that's okay. It'll come back again. Thank God it will come back again, so it is okay. I'm not saying it's okay because I'm going to make it okay, but thank God he is making it okay. and his people as well. Srila Prabhupada, Srila Christ, and others. Thank God for them. And thank God for God. Yeah, we're basically skipping the first paragraph in the purport, which is about, it's all bliss. Everything there is all bliss, and Krishna is everywhere. Spiritual and material energies, they're all in Krishna, and he is in everything else. He is present everywhere in the material and spiritual universes. And there's also an analogy giving here. And this goes full circle back to what I started with my Christian Bible course about metaphors. There are different kinds of metaphors, but there's a science to this as well. So here we talk about a tree and leaves of a tree. So Krishna is the main tree, and the leaves of a tree are his plenary expansions, the four-armed forms, Damodara, Janardana, Narayan, Vamana, Padmanabha, etc. These are also Krishna. They're the leaves of Krishna. And the supreme abode and the Krishna who is there is also Krishna. That is the two-armed form of Krishna. That is the difference. Krishna is Krishna, but there is a home where he likes to live, where you're seeing him in his true form, what he really likes to do. And once again, he's a person just like us. So just think of yourself or anyone you know. There's probably only rarely, unless you're dealing with a very advanced soul who is like a child and who is at, kind of living in the moment blissfully, spontaneously all the time. Most of us, it's only some of the times when we're really doing what we love in our nature, doing our svadharma. It's only sometimes that we're doing that. But basically my claim is that even if you're the supreme Lord of the universe, and you can be perfect in all ways and at all times, no exceptions, there is still a desire, a nature, a way, a dharma to just be a bit more happy at home. To have a comfortable place. Home. Place you can go back to. When you get tired, when you get bored of exploring, home you can come back to with family. So this metaphor of the main tree and the leaves of the tree, this is a very mundane metaphor, not to be used in other places. In the same way that H.D. Goswami uses the word suffused. That's just a very nice, particular word with good imagery that works perfectly in this context. Because the main ethos of Krishna consciousness, of Vedanta and Bhakti Vedanta, is science. It's a spiritual science. It's always a science, but it's using spiritual contents. But the main ethos is science the whole time. It's always science. But because we're dealing with spiritual contents that are mystical and subtle in nature, sometimes doesn't feel like a science. When you're a human being in the 21st century, you're used to all the material sciences, you may think, oh, people are just saying this is a science. No, it really is a science. And to understand that, you have to actually be a scientist yourself and actually practice this science. And that's one reason I'm doing these live streams, is to continue my own study and practice of this science and to show others as well. So this is a useful analogy. The tree is the tree. The leaf is just as much a part of the tree as the trunk is, as the roots, as the stem, as the fruits, the flowers. It's all a tree. A tree is a tree. But what are you? You are a tiny little atom somewhere on this huge tree. So for you, it's actually a big difference if you're in the middle of the root or on the tip of the tiniest, weakest, withering leaf on the farthest branch, the leaf that's about to fall down to the ground and die. And you think you've made it to the highest part of the tree, but you're lying, and you're actually at the tip of the leaf where you're about to, everything's gonna crash home and die and and everything. For you, that's a big difference. But from the transcendental perspective, it's a tree. Relax. It's all Krishna. It's all one big tree. And the more you see the tree, not the forest, not just the leaves, but the more you see the tree, the more you can connect with that tree. And the more you actually do connect with that tree as it is, the more you will, at least there's a higher chance that you'll move closer and closer to the heart of the tree. And that's what we're talking about in this first cluster, the supreme abode of the Lord, which is the heart of the tree. In my mind, I'm imagining the middle of the trunk. Maybe it's in the root structure. I'm not a biologist. I'm not like, I don't know. I do know, I'm pretty sure in the, there's a picture of a tree in the images in the Gita, and this Gita, which was fully authorized, there's that one picture where it says Krishna as the super soul resides in all living beings, and I think it shows him in the tree. Okay, the humble sage sees all with equal vision. So there's dog, elephant, but yeah, there's no tree there with the soul in it. Beautiful pictures. Beautiful pictures. And yeah, there's a good chance. Most of the Gita pictures, the plates that I'm used to looking at, are from the later edited version. But I got to say, the colors, just the colors in these pictures are incredible. They're so rosy. Everything has got this juicy purple, pink, red tint of life to it. Is there one more? Yep, there's 3 whole sections of pictures. And now I'm on the third one. Here's the Sampradaya. Draupadi. Yeah, this is really the complete Gita, Draupadi is a Bhagavatam story. It's not a main story in the Gita, but It's here. There's so many hints to all the other Vedic literatures. Here's the two birds. And Chaitanya. There's a few plates of Chaitanya as well. This is complete. Everything you need is in this one edition. So if you're listening to this, you are almost definitely in the tree. Where are you in the tree? That's what we've been talking about. We hope to be going to the heart of the tree. Not in the leaves and not in the branches. Using this analogy further, we could say that that's what Prabhupada and the great preachers are doing, is they're going to the furthermost edge of the outer lying branch to capture and save the fallen souls who have gone to the outsides. That could be very accurate and exactly what's happening with this metaphor. But it's dangerous work. The very dangerous work. I'm immediately reminded of the joke Prabhupada said, well, you're only at risk at fall down if you've actually made it somewhere. If you haven't actually ascended anything, there's no place to fall down from. But anyway, this went on far too long for some of these simple verses. So we're done. We'll continue next time with verse 23. Jai Srimad Bhagavad Gita. Jai Shri Krishna. Jai Srila Prabhupada. Jai Shri Vaishnavas. Jai Shri Vaishnavis. Hare Krishna, Hare Rama. See you later.